Thank you, Sarah. Well, so here we are at the first service at Metropolist. And this beautiful space will serve as our new home, our threshold, our cocoon, our in-between place for the next couple of years. And how beautiful is it? It's amazing. So my intention for this time is to, while we're here, so my intention is that we connect in a different way as a community. I mean, we already are because we're sitting in different places than we normally have sat for decades, probably. My hope is that we merge and solidify our relationships with one another and hear our stories that maybe we'd never heard from each other before. To step outside of our well-established comfort zone. Anybody out of their comfort zone right now? I am. It's like, where's my pulpit? Where's my ready room? Casey said, well, maybe it's behind here. And also to experiment with our worship service in new and different ways that we wouldn't have done in the building. So as we move through this service today, some of the questions that I'd like for us to ponder is, how can we use this time to the best of our ability? So that's one. And what would your goal be by the end of these 2 years? And I'm going to come back to these questions at the end. So the word liminal comes from a Latin word that means threshold. And a threshold is any point or place of entering or beginning. A liminal place is the time between what was and the next. So this is where we are. We're between the what was and the next. And it's a place of transition. It is a place of waiting. It is a place of not knowing. Have anybody ever been in this place before? We go into it in different periods of times in our lives. Some it's chosen and some it happens to us, right? And Richard Rohr said that when we are in this in-between place, we are in God's waiting room. So we look around, we are right now in God's waiting room. And he also said something interesting. He said, if we never enter the liminal space, we start idealizing normalcy. That's kind of a weird statement. So if we never enter the in-between place, then we idealize normalcy. And you may say, well, what's wrong with that? I mean, what's wrong with being normal? Do we not seek like a normal life? Yes, I know we're in unity, so you're like, no, maybe not. But, you know, we seek a normal relationship, normal health, a normal lifestyle, right? No, not us, probably. Gene Houston said many years ago that normal is somebody that you don't know very well. Because the more you know somebody, the more you know, well, you're a little quirky, aren't you? You have a few. So Jesus wasn't normal by any stretch of the imagination, was he? I mean, he could have been a carpenter. He could have been a nice little rabbi in his local synagogue. And instead, he basically challenged the whole system. And before he started his ministry, he went off into the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights, didn't he? 40 days and 40 nights in the Bible always represents just as long as it takes. So we are in our wilderness right now. And how long will we be here? 40 days and 40 nights, as long as it takes. 2 years, hopefully. And it was at that time that Jesus really looked at himself and decided, what is my ministry going to be? Because he was tempted by Satan at the time. It's like, throw yourself off this mountain and, you know, the angels will lift you up. Or turn this stone into bread because he was hungry. Or have everyone bow down to you. And he had to look at all the shadow aspects of how his ministry could unfold to say, no, get behind me. That's not it. And so when he started his ministry, he did it in a way that wasn't normal, right? He challenged the system. He challenged the Pharisees and the Sadducees. He changed how we looked at God, because at that point, God was Jehovah, right? He was out there, and kind of a vengeful God. You kind of had to be careful. And he started to call God Daddy, Abba. So he changed this whole relationship of how we as humans perceived God. And he also said that he had come to not break the commandments, but to fulfill the commandments, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your strength, and with all your mind. So things that were considered normal decades ago are no longer normal, right? And so again, when we step out of this idealizing what is normal, what is common, what is supposed to be, when we're willing to step outside of that, that's when things can begin to change. Because again, think about what was considered normal, decades ago or 100 years ago. Jackie Robinson was the first African American to play baseball. That sounds, in the major leagues, that sounds insane to us now, doesn't it? It sounds crazy. And yet, he had to step into that liminal territory, into that threshold, to be the first one to begin to change things. How many of you have had to step outside of the norm in order to begin to change things? You changed the deaf community, didn't you, with your starting the deaf school? I only know through Facebook some of the but I know you've been a leader in that. You all know my story about going to Wrigley Field when I was a kid and all this stuff, and it wasn't normal. It really wasn't. I would get to the ballpark before the Cubs got there, greet them, then hang out with all these people during the game. We'd go on road trips and created a community. And the truth is that some of the ways that I approach church community is what I learned at Wrigley Field back in the 60s. It's true. Because people came together from all different backgrounds, and there was a purpose in them hanging out. And the reason I'm bringing up this story is because the 69 Cubs are celebrating their 50th anniversary. And they called me and they said, so we've been watching some of your sermons on, on YouTube. And they said, do you talk about the Cubs a lot during your sermons? I said, no, they're Mariner fans. They wouldn't let me get away with it for that long a period of time. So anyway, they're making a documentary about the 69 season and the Cubs. And so they're flying me to Chicago this week, actually. To be a part of a documentary that remembers those years. That's how old I am. Pizza. That's right. So the truth is, right now, we're sort of like the Israelites, right? Who left their home in Egypt. And it was not easy for them to leave. I mean, even though they were in bondage, they had kind of a comfortable life, right? And so what happened to them when they left, they were wandering around. They didn't get to go from Egypt to the Promised Land. They had to wander for a little while. And I don't know if you remember, but they spent a lot of time complaining when they were in the wilderness. Like, why did we leave? We could have starved at home. What did we brought out? You brought us out here to starve. And, and so we'll probably complain a little bit over the next couple of years. Like, why did we leave that wonderful building? What were we thinking? What were we doing? Especially when I'm looking for a ready room and I'm hiding back there. But it's having to let go of what is in order to become what is next. So it's not easy to leave the comfort of our building to go into the wilderness. And yet, it is a necessary step in growth. Think of any growth that you've had in your life, right? You've had to leave what is known to go out into the unknown and to be in that wilderness. So, throughout the theme of this year, it's been riding the tide of impermanence. And in June, we talked about creativity and the creator, the first part of the Hindu Trinity. The second part of that is the preserver, Vishnu. And the third is the destroyer. So we're entering for this month, because it's Father's Day, I thought preserver would go really well with that, right? The one who takes care, the one who holds that space. So as we move into this space, it is with that preserver energy. It is with that, we're going to show up and we're going to do our work. We're going to do what needs to be done to be here and to continue that. So I'm going to expand on that more as we move forward. But just as Jesus defined his ministry while he was in the wilderness, we too right now have the opportunity to redefine ourselves while we are in this place. So I'm bringing you back to the question that I asked when we started, which is how can we use this time to the best of our ability? And at the end of these 2 years, what is it that you would like to see Seattle Unity be before we step back into our new building? So I invite you to turn your attention within, and I'm actually going to ask you to talk with somebody about this, and this is part of our stretching into a new place. But imagine that we have been in this place for 2 years, and we are ready to step back into the building. And how have we changed? How have we as a community transformed? What would you like Seattle Unity to be at the end of these 2 years? So at the end of these 2 years, I would like to see Seattle Unity be, and just imagine the highest and best that you possibly can. And then bringing your awareness back to this time and place, if you would be so kind, if you would turn to somebody next to you and share what you heard or what you saw or what you visioned. What do you see? If you could see anything at the end of these 2 years, I would like to see Seattle Unity be what? I'm giving you 4 minutes. Okay, calling you back. Thank your partner. Thank your partner and come on back. At the end of these 2 years, I would like Seattle Unity to be, let's hear some of your thoughts. Welcoming, joyous evolution, alive. Say what? More young people.
Grittier and more real.
Grittier. All right. I don't know what that means. What? A closer group. Serving the community. Lots of flowers.
Involved in social justice.
Involved in social justice. Know each other's names, and I'm going to take it a step further, know each other's stories. There's some remarkable, like, I didn't know you two didn't know that you both liked the Mariners until like a month ago. Sorry. Community through carpooling. Hear that one, guys?
There's a purity through loss.
A purity through loss. Thank you, Kathleen.
Tighter, but not so tight that when we move back into the new building, we feel exclusive.
Oh, that's a good point. So tighter, but not so tight that when we move back, we're exclusive, right? So that we don't become a clique, so that we constantly remain open to new people and new ideas and new movement, so that we're not so close that it's like, who are you? That's a good point, Scott. Thank you. John. More multi-generational and diverse. Age. All of the above.
Comfortable seats.
Uh-oh. Comfortable seats.
Dan here had a wonderful idea about not sitting in the same seat every time you come, to be sitting by different people and learning more about each other in that way.
And I think we're going to help with that because we're probably going to move the chairs around in different formations, maybe? We'll see. We'll see. Evelyn.
Options for connecting. I think the digital options and letting people be aware that the podcasts exist and that there are many ways to stay connected to unity.
Thank you. Holly, shout it out. No. Great place for her daughter to get married here in 2 years. And we can't hide here. We can't hide.
Exuding love.
Exuding love. Thank you.
Unity Community of Central Oregon just moved into a new space last fall. And one of the things we talked about was, this is a beautiful new space, but it's a building. And it's not about the building, it's about the community. And that's what we have taken to our hearts.
Thank you. Who else? I thought I saw a hand here.
The reason we're going to be grittier and more real is because when we move into our new space, we'll move in with a greater sense of wonder, if that makes sense. And maybe it doesn't.
Okay. Couple more.
Expand our presence and our activities beyond the city and out into the woods and the wilderness.
Yes, we've talked about having like hikes and things this summer, so we're starting today with the ball game. That's not the same, but it's a bit of a hike. Okay, Andrea, then we'll.
I think in 2 years, I know we will all be so grateful for this space. So if we could put ourselves there today and go forward in that grace, when we leave, we'll be sad to leave here too.
So for those of you who were at the service on Saturday and Sunday when we deconsecrated our space, I think it's important that now we consecrate this space. And we sort of did by singing Holy Ground. But I'd like you to reach out and touch the chair or the floor or the wall or something in this building. And I invite you to go to your heart space and bring your love, your consciousness, your energy into this room, into this building, into this liminal, threshold, cocoon, wilderness, beautiful place that is now the home of Seattle Unity. And so we dedicate and we consecrate this space to awakening, to community, to love, to change, and to all those words that you spoke into the circle. That is now here in every molecule and every atom of this room. And for this awareness, we are truly grateful. Amen.